Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel today. We're going to speak about the secret recipe investing in food tech. Okay, that's a very passionate topic also for me. And it's a very captivating topic as well. It's one of the most promising frontiers in the recent years, food technology. So it's really my pleasure now to introduce our distinguished panelists today. They bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the field. So Jan, we started with you. Jan Marsh, partner at DN Capital, correct?
Yeah, so hi guys. So DN's a leading pan-European venture capital fund. So we've got about $1 billion under management based out of London and Berlin. Last fund's 300 million, doing mostly Series A's in Europe and North America. I cover food, so I've done one food investment, Foodles in Paris, which is doing very well in the B2B food space. And before that, I used to run HelloFresh in the UK. So built it from zero to about 200 million revenue and got it to IPO. So that's kind of why I'm the designated food guy at my fund.
Thank you, Jan. Then we have with us Katarzyna Jill from ICOS Capital. Do I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, it's correctly. So I'm principal of functional food systems in ICOS Capital. We are a Dutch-based VC, and we are working in the section of the digital and sustainable industry. So sustainable angle is very important for us. And food tech is one of the sectors that we invest in. We also invest in biochemical space, biomaterial, and also decarbonization. We closely work with corporates, and we mostly invest in B2B solutions. So this is basically what we do.
Okay, thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Gil Gidron from Cardumen Capital. Yes, please, couple of words.
Yeah, just a little bit about myself and Cardumen. We are a deep tech VC, a European deep tech VC. We have right now 5 funds. In the first few funds, we invested in deep technology in areas like cyber, artificial intelligence, big data technology, machine visioning, so on. And then we wanted to grow in a different way, so we analyzed deep sectors that we thought we can apply those technologies and make a revolution. And one of the sectors that we came as a conclusion was agri-food tech. We invest also in agri, but also in food. And we created a specific team to do this. On top of that, we signed a partnership agreement with the Basque Culinary Center. I don't know if anybody knows the Basque Culinary Center in the north of Spain. And they bring all this new vision of taste to food in the future. So this is our approach. It's technology and with the right experts.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's make a short introduction now to the topic. We all know from farm to the fork, every aspect of the food ecosystem is currently undergoing a profound transformation, especially in the recent years. So we have a lot of breakthroughs in biotechnology, artificial intelligence is here, advanced manufacturing, the rise of plant-based proteins, vertical farming, cultivated meat. All those things are just a glimpse of the vast potential that the food industry and the food tech is really having. And what does this mean for the investors in the sector? So for sure it's not an easy sector. In any case, we have a lot of topics related to changes in the market volatility. We have a lot of topics related to regulatory issues as well. My first question to you guys is the following. What are some key indicators or signals that investors should look for when considering investment opportunity in the food tech sector? Jan, shall we start with you? Some key indicators.
I think the first thing is work out what you know and what you don't know. So it's a very large space, as you alluded to. I have ignored a lot of it because I don't understand it. So, I think it goes for everything from food delivery solutions like say Glovo all the way to deep tech agriculture to quite a lot of bioscience. I've kind of excluded everything that's very deep tech from my portfolio because it's not my background, it's not my fund's background. So, a lot of people invested in molecular-based cheese production to remove dairy from the supply chain. And one of my friends, actually a founder of a successful company in London, but you know, I meet him and he's like, yeah, we're about 8 years to monetization, and I'm like, that's just not my bag. So I focused on 2 sub-segments, and I think you need to because it's such a vast area. I think these guys know a lot more about the deep tech side than me. So I do food distribution and consumer brands, and some forms of applied software. So we've been looking, for example, at software platforms for regenerative agriculture. In the platform, and the player I'm most comfortable with, which is food distribution, like a la HelloFresh or things like that. I think I look for three things probably. So a high degree of customer love, but stickiness. Food is faddy by its very nature. Okay. And so you need to see something where you see, the cohorts often will drop off, but at least flattening if it's D2C, for example. Second is good margins and ability to scale the supply chain. Unless you're in something purely digital, and there are solutions like that, I think you're often touching physical product. Like at HelloFresh, we're touching physical product. You wouldn't believe the chaos we had with chicken deliveries coming in on time or not coming on time, etc. And I think having the ability to really scale a robust supply chain and also deliver it with good margins is very critical.
Obviously, yeah.
But that's probably the 2 main ones for me, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Katarzyna, what do you think?
I think the key indicators is actual market needs. Because like from perspective of B2B investors, it takes time. So if you're already starting with the point that you are bringing the solution that already is solved, so there is not actually solve the problem, then you start bad. So I think the startups that are new, they should really think what has not been solved already. So if I look on the investment, I have to really see if this idea will bring somewhere like some profitability in the future. Okay. So the market needs to be the first. And of course, the USP, so how the startups are really differentiating from each other. And actually what your idea brings additionally. What will not be easy to replace, because from the perspective of B2B, like ingredient space of alternative proteins, there are so many products that are popping up, but actually they are really look the same. And we are sometimes struggling if it's really the solution, does it really bring something new? And plus then when you bring the factor of the corporate or the company that you have to bring this ingredient to, then another problem starts. So I would start from the indicator of the market needs.
Yeah, great insight. Obviously, I'm also coming from the corporate perspective, and I completely agree with what you said. It's a little bit of a different aspect here. And Gil, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, what we did before we start talking to a specific startup or see, we analyze very much those markets and understand the demand very well. In terms of food science, with the Basque Culinary Center, we think it's very important the IP that the company has or will develop, and for that's key, because we see a lot of failures of not sufficient differentiation in IP and not being able to maintain or to sustain the competitiveness of the IP, and that's where we spend most of the time. Obviously, the team, as always, is very important. When we go to other subsectors, we do it top down. I mean, we look at the sector, we see what are the key factors to be competitive, and then that's what we think are the trends, and we work on those areas first.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a great insight. So then, if we might continue in the same direction, let's talk a little bit more about the market. So how do you evaluate the potential scalability and market demand of a food tech startup before you make an investment decision? So here the market is a little bit different than in the other sectors, I believe. So it's interesting to talk more about that. And the scalability, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, the market size always varies by business model, but I mean, it's pretty. I'll give you. I think it's best to talk through tangible examples, right? So, I did an investment. There's only one I've done in food currently is Foodles. It's a Paris-based B2B food tech which puts fridges and offices and the biggest e-com canteens in a box. If you look at the B2B canteen market in just say France, it's between a 4 and 8 billion market. It's about half the size of the restaurant market. So you can kind of often look and think, and then you kind of look at the underlying customer base that accrued up to that point, say to Series A, and you see how replicable it is. And for example, there, I looked and saw you had some larger corporates, like LVMH had it in its HQ, for example, but you also had town halls, you also had hospitals, you also had a range of use cases, and so it's very easy to break that down and then work out, the market size based on sub-segmented customer. I think there's harder ones. There was a very hyped round in Germany recently called Holy Energy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's we debated up putting term sheet in. It's granular-based energy drink.
Okay.
So you basically, instead of buying Monster or Red Bull, you get granules and you put them in water, and it's a lower cost to the customer, and it is it's also like sort of more eco-friendly because you're not shipping the volume of water. And it had best-in-class KPIs for a D2C brand, quite a few top funds, and it was done by US fund Left Lane Capital. And that was a very difficult one on market size because if you actually look at energy drinks, it's one of the largest sectors of sort of consumer goods.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you probably don't realize it, Monster is worth 50 billion. It's worth more than a lot of the largest banks, for example. But this was just being used by gamers to stay awake all night and play Fortnite. And so the whole question there was, can they break out of that hardcore first demographic of customers, which is gamers, and move into other segments? And that was a debate that all the VCs had looking at it, and there was no exact science. We're trying to read the tea leaves, so it's sometimes complex, to be honest.
Thank you. Thank you, Katarzyna.
Well, so I think besides talking to hundreds of startups all the time, we build the good relationships with our industrial partners and also corporates that we really keep good relations with. We do it or on the daily basis or organizing our innovation summits. So basically talking to these people, experts in the field, we know what is happening on the market. So we are able really to define what is actually needed or not. Another thing, once we do our due diligence, evaluating the startups, and it takes some time, we talk to the clients of the startups that are interesting for us. And once you talk to the clients, you are actually realizing what the clients need, what they're looking for, and where you should look for the solution. So this is the way how we do.
Okay. A lot of relationship and...
Yeah, and I think it's very important. What is very important is the transparency, because in B2B business, when there are young startups, they have a brilliant solution, they have really strong tech behind, but it's really difficult for them to arrive to the point when they do the deal with the corporate or the smaller company. So they have also really get to understand what the corporate needs or the industrial partner needs. And this is where we step in, and we facilitate also this relation between them to accelerate the process and make it happen faster.
Super. Thank you. Gil?
Well, just to maybe add a different perspective or a complementary perspective is scalability. You mentioned it before. For us, scalability is key because you can have a technology, but it cannot be scalable, and then you cannot meet the market demands. And scalability has to be scalability at the design of the technology. It's not that if you have a 1 bioreactor and then you have 1,000. No, it's a way that people develop new technologies thinking about how to scale it. And that's many times makes a major difference. We understand the market, we understand the demand. We are more B2B than B2C. We're a B2B investor. But once we understand the market, we think very quickly about the scalability from day one or from day zero. I think this is an interesting perspective for you guys to understand what are the possibilities of making something really differentiated in that specific industry sector.
Yes. Yes, thank you. From my personal experience, the latest investment we did with my company was in Japan, and we completely overestimated the market. For example, we started with a solution that had 2% of the Japanese market, and we hoped we're gonna gain at least maybe 10 to 15, and 3 years later, we're still not there. I would say that these things in the food tech can happen maybe easier than in other industries. Definitely, this was our experience. Okay, let's change a little bit the direction. What role do you see that venture capital firms and other investors like corporates will play and are playing in shaping the future direction of the food technology innovation? So the idea here is to ask you, do we really need venture capital firms to innovate in the food industry? Or would corporates be enough? Or can we innovate only with the current big players on the market? Because there are a lot of food companies that currently hold big portions of the market.
I think there's all, I'd hope at least, given I'm a venture capitalist, I'm slightly biased in this response, but I'd hope there's always a place for us. Obviously, in that kind of startup of new food distribution models, I think there's definitely, you always need risk capital. I don't think corporates don't come in until earlier. I think if you saw the rise of the food delivery wave, you saw businesses like HelloFresh, for example, some of the businesses I mentioned, a lot of the D2C brands, you need money to get started. Often they get picked up by the corporates later. So for example, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Y-Food, it got bought by Nestle for $500 million. It was a meal replacement. That went through several rounds of venture funding and then gets picked up by the corporate. But the corporates, because they're not so good at innovation, often look to buy startups once they hit a certain scale on the D2C side. On the more tech side, for these guys, I've definitely seen examples where you need venture capital because people are building tech products. The one that I've been most interested in recently is the rise of regenerative agriculture. So if you look at some of the big FMCGs like Nestle or McCain Fries or whoever else, they put out very strong pronouncements that they're going to completely change their supply chain in the next sort of 15 years. And it's a classic tech problem. How do you manage a supply chain of hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of farmers at scale to work out, have they changed their agrarian practices? Have they, is that improving carbon capture in the soil? Could we qualify that and can we remunerate them for it? And there's quite a few. There's a Greeners, another one I looked up called Klim in Germany, who are building very clearly tech platforms to do that. And the corporates are happy to pay.
True.
They are happy even to co-invest, but I don't think they have the DNA to be the driving force to know how to scale an early stage tech business. And so that's where I hope at least we would play a part still.
Thank you. And Katarzyna, your perspective
well,
from the
so
B2B?
I think, except the obvious capital and the cash that we bring, I think I can talk on the perspective of our fund. So we bring expertise that we gained for over 18 years. We do our do's and don'ts. We learn on our mistakes, on our victories, and we really screen a lot the market. So we bring this expertise. We bring also strategic partnerships that are very important for the development of the company. And I think it's very important because food tech especially, the young companies, they really have to understand that the collaboration is the key. And without this kind of approach, it will be really difficult and time-consuming to arrive to the point where they want to be profitable. So the collaboration with corporates or the partners is very important. And I understand that sometimes startups face the idea that they are afraid, let's say, share the knowledge, share the IP, or so on. But they can really they can build in a really good way the solid partnerships, not only with the investor that give them the knowledge and the prospect relations and the capital, of course, but also the partners that they can collaborate with.
Thank you.
Well, we think they're complementary, VCs and corporates.
Yeah.
And it's very important. I will say if you're doing a startup and you have good corporate connections and you see that as a way to move forward, it's fine. But to have the view of the VC, because we see many startups that make very basic mistakes at the beginning that then that not help development. One example that is quite obvious is that even if you have somebody in your cap table, you don't give them any type of rights or exclusivities, and many corporates will ask for that. If you do that, you're closing your door for the future. That's what we VCs. We know how to work with teams, develop teams, and we know and understand how corporates work, open innovation. The cycle of a big corporation and a startup is very, very different.
Very different.
Very, very different. I think VCs, we understand that better. Corporates are experts in killing startups. So remember that, but also remember that VCs, sometimes we look like we don't know. VCs know very well the industry and understand very well the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about success. Can you share some success stories that you had in your experience and some factors that contributed to that success, specifically, obviously, in the food tech sector? Something that comes to your mind?
Well, I started HelloFresh in the UK in my living room, putting boxes and food, and I think that was a very quite extreme trajectory of growth. It was quite crazy. I think there it was really a couple of things. Obviously, get the product right, or iterate it, and that was very data-driven actually. So we did recipe scores, and we used a software called Chattermill, which took like tens of thousands of feedback after each week, and would almost aggregate all the qualitative data into quantitative data, so the early stage of AI, and work out which recipes worked, which recipes didn't work. Had a massive impact on cohorts, etc. Then cracking nationwide delivery. So sounds simple, but up until that point, almost all food that was needed to be put through the cold chain was shipped in refrigerated vans, which wasn't scalable. We developed, for the first company to develop, putting food in with ice pack and with insulation around it and turned to nationwide 3PL delivery. And then that allowed us to switch on marketing channels that were very scalable. So actually, bizarrely, our largest marketing channel was door-to-door sales. Not very tech, but it worked very scalably. And then really working on, as you scale a food business, what I've seen, I see now my business in Paris, more on the distribution side, right? But you can really improve the margins as you scale, but you have to be very disciplined about how you do that. Okay. So we had a business that didn't work. It had a 10% margin. The paybacks were horrible. And we got it to about a 40% margin. And then last thing, again, if you're in a physical business, is patience. We got to a point when we were bursting at the seams. Our warehouse was run out of space, disaster. If it was too hot, the heating system was really, in the refrigerated areas was really at max. And we had to build a whole new warehouse. And that took 18 months. And we couldn't do any iteration, any product development, couldn't even push too hard on marketing till we could scale. But then we got, I think the UK is about 300 million in revenue, and I think now the group's doing 7 or 8 billion in revenue, I believe.
Yeah, that's a success story.
And then it was also, to be honest, if you can in more of a consumer-focused food business, if you can win the US, it's game-changing, because as much as we love Europe, it's a lot of fragmented small markets that are less attuned to adopting technology. The moment we switched on the US, I was spending about 2 million a month on marketing on TV in the UK.
Oh,
they
wow.
could sink 20 million, and the CACs worked and the paybacks worked. So that's probably my most notable example of a food success that I've been involved with.
Thank you, thank you. Jill, your success story?
Well, so maybe on the perspective of ingredient company that is basically deep tech, and you need. So the technology is very important part, and basically the startup were created with the team with a strong tech background, good CTOs, but sometimes the execution is not proper. So what I can share is that there was a company in our portfolio that basically has super great technology. They were performing very well. They were doing clinical trials. The IP was brilliant, but they couldn't execute. So we were thinking, what is the problem there?
Okay.
So we realized that the execution was not good. So the team was the problem, and it's not the point of. Because behind all of it, there are people, and it's very important how they communicate with the clients, how they communicate with the partners. So we helped the company in a way that we found a potential new CEO, which brought the good execution, and then the CTO also became a really good person executing his part as well. And from also our perspective, we connect them to the good parties so that they collaborate on the scaling perspective, on the production, and also on the future clients. So these were, I think, we made a good job.
Well, congrats. And
Well,
the final success. Yes, just
with a few seconds
a few
we have
seconds.
left, let me mention two different stories. One of food science. We invested in a company that developed a plant-based fish with the right texture.
Oishi?
Oshi.
Oh, okay.
Very good, Oshi. With the right texture and with the right flavor.
Great.
It's been chosen one of the only food tech company among the 20 best in Israel. So it looks very promising. They're already selling in the US, and it looks actually fantastic. The second, in Germany, we invested in a company called Tasty Urbans. These are ex-guerrilla executives with an approach to go to market in areas where there is no delivery of the big operators, using the spare time of the restaurants' kitchens. And it's also a very nice approach. It's a way to get to places where big operators cannot deliver.
Absolutely.
And it's also very successful. So come and do things with us, with all of us in food, because the food challenge is the future.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. Have a good the rest of the day. Thank you.